Thank you very much, and good morning, everyone. As you can probably tell from the shirt, I'm a very proud father. My son Luke, who's sitting in the audience here, is 21 this year. My daughter Blythe is also here, is 18 this year. I consider my greatest achievement in life, and certainly the one I'm most proud of, raising these two amazing human beings. But it certainly has been quite a journey, and that's what I want to get into today. When Blythe was just 3 years old, we were told by a doctor that she would need to have surgery to her heart. And as those of you who are parents would know, it's far more traumatic for the parent than it is for the child to hear that kind of news. So I went to the surgeon and I said, please could I come into the theater with her and just hold her in my arms as she drifts off under anesthetic, just to minimize her trauma. And if I could be around in the recovery room when she wakes up. And he kindly agreed, and we did that, and the operation was a great success. And about 6 weeks later, we were at home and we had a gathering of people around at the house. We had some friends and family around, and I overheard Blythe, my 3-year-old beauty, saying to just a group of family and friends these words. She said, "My heart was broken, but my daddy fixed it." I was completely finished. I mean, it was an epiphanous moment. I had tears in my eyes. I had to kind of retreat to my room and just gather myself to come and be the man again. I don't know what that word means. Eh? I don't know if masculinity is even masculinist is a word, but anyway. But Blythe gave me a priceless gift that morning. She gave me the gift of seeing myself through her eyes. And I found myself asking the question of myself, am I the dad and the man that she needed me to be? In her eyes, I was this hero, this man who could do anything, fix anything. I had fixed her heart. And so I started this journey of discovering what it meant to be a real man and a real dad. And the further along the journey I went, the more I realized how much work I needed to do on myself. It's one of those rabbit holes you start going down, and it just gets deeper and deeper and deeper. The first thing I discovered was that masculinity and fatherhood is in a state of crisis. It affects all of us. Every one of us here had a father, unless you're one of the aliens that Vivian was talking about earlier. We had a father. Most of us, half of us are men. It affects all of us. And it's in a state of crisis. As we sit here this morning, there are 15 times more men in jail than there are women. Now, that's an insane statistic, 15 times more. Insurance companies much prefer women. They much do, because women are far less likely to do themselves in and those around them in a very creative fashion. Gender-based violence is at an all-time high, as is abuse of children. Role models are in short supply, male role models anyway. We have corrupt politicians, we have captains of industry that are greedy, we have rock stars behaving badly, possible exception of a few that were here this morning, and rap artists. We have Homer Simpson, the epitome of the incompetent male. So masculinity is in crisis. For many years, I've done work in communities, doing socioeconomic work. And one of the things we did about 3 or 4 years ago was we decided to really go deeply into this community to find out what are the core issues underlying the real pain in the community. Apart from poverty is a big one. And we found that the real issue at the core of this is families that are damaged and hurt and falling apart. And as we looked at these families, we found the one common denominator in all of these families that were damaged and hurt was the lack of a present and engaged and active father and man. And so we started an organization called Father a Nation, with a view that if we could heal men and put them back into homes, we could heal the nation, and by extension, we could heal the world. I came to believe, though, that the problem is not men and masculinity. The problem is wounded men and a distorted notion of what it is to be a man. John Eldridge, in his book, Wild at Heart, wrote that every single boy in his journey to become a man takes an arrow in the center of his heart, in the place of his strength. Because this wound is very rarely discussed and even more rarely healed, every man carries a wound. Every single young boy growing up has a question in his heart, and I experienced this with Luke. And he brings this question to his father, and in the absence of his father, an older man. And the question is this, the question is, Dad, do I have what it takes? Am I enough? Am I big enough, strong enough, fast enough, cool enough? Am I enough? And he brings this question to his father. And the father needs to answer that question. And very often, the father doesn't answer the question. An absent father doesn't answer the question. Effectively, he says to his son, no, you don't have what it takes. In fact, you're not even worth me being there to answer the question. An abusive father answers in the most brutally negative way by assailing the heart of his son. And many fathers that are present don't answer either because they themselves haven't had their question answered. When Luke was 13 years old, I decided to take him away on a rites of passage program because we just don't often do that much in our culture. I promise you there were no circumcisions that took place. But we had a group of eight or so men, and we went away. And I asked these men just to bring a message that they'd like to impart to a younger man, from an older man to a younger man, and just to buy a little gift that would embody that message that they could just give to Luke, to impart this. It was a fantastic weekend. At the end of it, what struck me most about the weekend was not so much the impact that it had on Luke, because I think Luke was used to having a bit of a crazy dad doing weird stuff. But the men were deeply touched, and almost to a man they came to me, one or two with tears in their eyes. And they said, Craig, this was an amazing experience, but it highlighted to me what I didn't get. They were basically saying to me, my question wasn't answered. No one imparted that sense of masculinity to me. So most men grow up and live their lives out of this sense of inadequacy, a need to be validated. And even more tragically, some of them grow up out of the sense of resignation to the fact that I don't have what it takes. I'm not a man. Now, if you add to that wound the messages we receive as boys growing up, it makes it even worse. So the message are essentially sex, power, money, and big boys don't cry. As we grow up, a locker room can be a very, very painful place for a young boy because it's all about the biceps and the testosterone and the muscle and the jocks. So the guys are the captains of the rugby team and the sportsmen, they're the men. As we become adults, it's the guys who have the fast cars and the fancy houses. And always it's the guys who have the most notches in their belt, the guys that have managed to attract the most chicks. And isn't it strange that as a man, if you mess around and sleep around, you're a stud? If you do the same as a woman, you have a far less pleasant label, because as a man, we're taught that this is what it is. And it's not limited to our society. We did a program some time ago in a community, a poor community, a development program for 3 weeks. And at the end of it, we were able to give each of the guys on the program a small stipend. And this one individual finished the program, received his stipend. He had 3 children from 3 different women, desperately in need of educating and clothing and food. He took this money and he went out and he bought himself a fancy belt and a beautiful pair of shoes. I was furious with this guy. I thought, what the heck is he doing? He's got these kids that need. But I realized that even in that community, a poor community, wealth was put up there as the standard by which a man judges himself. So if he could stroll down the street with a nice belt and a good pair of shoes, he was the man. And I realized that deeply ingrained wound was so deep that he needed to have this to be the man. Now, if you add to all of that the fact that big boys don't cry, we grew up learning that, it's not so cool for a guy to cry. Don't sissies do that, wussies do that. So we grow up detached from our heart. You put 2 men in a room and you say to them, have a deep, meaningful conversation, guys. Terror ensues. Huh? The guys will phone their dentist and book that root canal and say, I'm coming. No, forget the injection, rather than have this. Whereas you put 2 ladies in a room, it flows naturally. You don't have to tell them. In fact, you have to ask them to stop at some point. Okay. The point is we grew up detached from our hearts. Now, this is a disaster waiting to happen. You have a man who's grown up, he's got a sense of inadequacy, and I need to prove myself. And the way I need to prove myself is chase more women, have more money, and get more power. And by the way, I can't talk to anyone about this because, big boys don't do that kind of stuff. It's a disaster. So how do we respond? The first thing we do as men is we pose. And I feel a complete sellout, guys, saying this, so forgive me, don't lynch me, but all men pose. I remember not even a year ago, I was going for a jog along the promenade, and I'm jogging. I've been having trouble with my knees. They say if you get to 50 and your knees aren't giving you trouble, you haven't lived. So I've definitely lived. I'm jogging along the promenade, and my one knee really starts packing in, so I have to start limping. And just after I start limping, I see these 2 attractive young ladies jogging towards me. And immediately, I start running. Immediately. Not even a second thought. And I'm running, I'm thinking, Craig, you idiot. You wrote a book about this stuff. You know this stuff. You should. But I didn't stop until they'd passed. I stopped, and then I began to say, you've blown it. You're posing. Why do you think men don't like asking for directions? Because it means admitting we don't know what we're doing and we don't know where we're going. And we hate that. Men hate that. So we'd rather drive in our car with this irate and angry wife or partner next to us, glaring at us, and we're going to find it. We're the man. We're going to find this place. I'm convinced that navigational systems were invented by a group of very, very frustrated women. And it doesn't stop there. When we get to the destination, if we're really dishonest, we say, honey, I actually meant to show you that graveyard that we drove past 3 times on the way. You know, we got to play the man. We play the man. The truth is that a man does not have to play the man to be the man. He is the man. And so much more so if he doesn't have a constant need to prove it. The second thing we do as men is we fail to use our strength. We abdicate. In record numbers now in life, men are failing to step up to the plate and take responsibility for what they are. In record numbers, unprecedented numbers. We fail to commit to that relationship. You know, women are saying, where are the men that commit? We fail to follow through with the childcare support. There are an unprecedented number of homes today in the world where there is no present and engaged father. Men are abdicated. And we withdraw in many, many different ways. We draw often into addiction. Some of them are legitimate, like work. We become the workaholic. Video games. More and more guys are getting stuck in the virtual reality of TV games. It can be sport. Or it can be more illicit, like pornography and drinking, etc. Escape. It's easier to live in this virtual world where we control stuff than it is to step up to the plate and deal with the real world. Winston Churchill said a powerful thing. He said that a man does what he must, in spite of personal consequences, in spite of pressures, dangers, and obstacles. And this is the basis of all human morality. A man does what he must. The third thing we do as men is we misuse our strength. We see it all over society. We see the alpha male. We see it in churches, we see it in homes, we see it in businesses, we see it in government. The alpha male asserting himself at the expense of others, dominating. And that quickly can morph into abuse. Starts off innocently enough with a bit of verbal abuse, a bit of emotional abuse, can quickly morph to sexual and physical abuse. But that's not masculinity. I don't think there's a woman alive who hasn't at some point in her life felt intimidated or fearful in the presence of a man. It's something as men we don't experience, as women you do. That's not masculinity. True masculinity is wired to fight for what is right and to fight against what is wrong. True masculinity is wired so that we give more than we take, and we never, ever, ever take what is not ours. True masculinity is wired to use its strength to create a safe place for both our fellow men and women and children to live in. Men are meant to be dangerous. We are designed to be dangerous. But never, ever, ever, ever to women or to children or to our fellow man or to society or to families. Only dangerous to what's dangerous to them. We're designed to be dangerous to corruption, dangerous to abuse, dangerous to prejudice. This is what men should be dangerous to. Being Blythe's dad has shown me in the most intimate way that every single woman on the planet is somebody's little girl, indescribably precious, and who deserves to live in a world in which they're safe, cherished, nourished, fought for, loved. And Blythe's inspired me really to be the kind of man that fights for that kind of world. Being Luke's dad has shown me the wonder and the beauty of the masculine soul, that the masculine soul is strong, yet gentle. It's powerful, and yet it's safe. And Luke's inspired me to be the kind of guy that seeks to try and model that kind of masculinity. UNICEF recently said that absent fathers is the single biggest social issue of our times. One social commentator said that the damage to humanity done by the epidemic of unfathered men and women is worse than the damage to humanity done by war and disease combined. This sadly is our reality at the moment. But it really, really doesn't have to be that way. As men stand up and realize that they can receive validation for their manhood in legitimate ways, as we stand up and we fight against passivity. The opposite of masculinity is not femininity, it's passivity. As men reject passivity and stand up and use their strength to create the safe world, we can give birth to a whole new world. False masculinity has been the cause of the vast majority of the world's pain and suffering. True masculinity can be and must be the solution to that. And that's why with all my heart I believe that if we can heal men and we can restore fathers to doing what fathers should do, and we can rediscover, not reinvent, rediscover what masculinity truly is, we can heal the world. Thank you very much.